What are you looking for that tells you it's a deal worth pursuing?
There's a few kind of high level metrics. The property has to be big enough because, for us, we have investors participate in the deals, they're passive investors. And as such, we need a property that's big enough so people can A, get involved, and B, we can install our infrastructure. So, back to an earlier point on like building a team, we have a centralized team. We have property managers, asset managers that are doing everything. So there needs to be enough revenue to justify like their existence almost. Because if it's too small, it just doesn't make sense. So we generally go between 30 and 200 units. We prefer public utilities, because utility kind of usage is very important to the residents. And if you need to make that replacement, then you have to budget for it. And if you budget for it, that also hurts the returns a little bit. So we generally like the public utilities more. As far as other metrics, it's more so like where is the property financially today? Where can it be later on? Some are
Mhm.
very like just mom and pop, just like individuals owning it over the years. They're afraid to raise the rent, and you have like $200 lot rent, whereas like everyone else is renting for like I don't know 13, 1400 in the city. You're like, all right, well, there's some room to normalize it, bring it up, and still be compelling in the marketplace. So I think the value add opportunity you have to watch out
Mhm.
for. The one thing people get wrong as well is the infill capability. So your ability to bring in new units. To what you
Okay.
said earlier with NIMBYism, some municipalities make it very difficult to bring in new units. They're not supposed to completely restrict it, but they can make your lives very difficult because they just don't want more of these. And the reason being the math doesn't add up for them. It costs around 7 to 8,000 to service one family living in a mobile home compared to around $1,000 in tax revenue. So the municipality is
Mm.
losing money every family that it allows in.
That is very interesting. I always thought they didn't want it just because of like a stigma or, that mobile home parks aren't cool, right?
Well, that too. That too. They think it hurts the residential values because residential real estate is valued as a comparable, right? Like how much did your neighbor sell for? So they're like, oh, that's going to drag everyone down. So that's one way. But another is like the strain on their budget. I mean, usually like budgets for small towns, they're like quite thin. So they're like, well, we can't support this.
I have a family member who lives in a mobile home park, and everything you're saying about the low lot rent and everything, like, it's true, and it lets this person live a better life in other ways because their housing cost is so low, so I think that's important, and then the other
Yeah.
piece, thinking of the community, like, let's say the city or the municipal aspect, that's a challenge because on the one hand, like you're saying, in terms of the income they're getting from the property itself, that's not gonna cover their cost of servicing that family, and yet so many communities need affordable housing for the service workers, right? Like they're having issues where there's not, like, I mean, post COVID, right? Not enough wait staff in the restaurants or things like that because people can't afford to live in certain areas. And so I could see where overall, I don't know. I've never loved how
Yeah.
municipalities are so hardcore against these mobile home parks personally.
Yeah, and you'll see it more often in like call it secondary markets, closer like let's say, a more established one like the West Coast California. They would prefer to have a luxury apartment building that gives like 100x more in tax revenue or like retail space or warehouse stuff. Any of those uses would give them just a ton more revenue. So you'll actually see these communities being actively redeveloped and they'll essentially get shut down and the residents they all get displaced like 50 100 families like they got to find a new place to live and like they can't because they're like there's no other place that is affordable if not like okay fine I have to get in line with Section 8, government vouchers and stuff, but it's like it is a
Mhm.
process to qualify for that. So,
And this is one of the nice things about, I think, real estate investing as well versus like some other investing avenues or anything like that. It's like individual investors are really making communities and houses for other Americans, right? Other human beings, where on a more corporate level, on a more institutional level, that would not necessarily happen, right? Like you're saying, these municipalities would rather have this luxury apartment building that doesn't service the same kind of people and doesn't service the people who really need this kind of housing in this kind of community.
yeah. And, just something that I learned just talking to a lot of investors too is, yeah, I mean, absolutely the impact of your investment means a lot because money, like what I said earlier, is a store of value. And to a lot of people with like wealthier people, they care about how they allocate their resources. And they usually allocate it to things that they care about, instead of like, I mean, hey, look, if you're investing in OpenAI, great, but like, what is that doing, right? As opposed to like, hey, let me invest in this community of 50 people. Like I'm offering like 50 families housing and like great, we'll happily pay more taxes because that means that cities will let us around for longer. So,
Mhm.
the equation just has to work out.
And now it sounds like I'd love for you to get into this more. Are you syndicating these communities as you develop them then?
Yeah, yeah. So syndication just means that, we have a general partner and a limited partner. Limited partners are typical investors. They're high earners, business owners. They're like cash rich, time poor. They want to spend more time on their business, their family. So then they invest with us, like 50, 100,000 or more. And we as the general partners, we build a firm to actually find the deals, analyze them, sign on to the loan. We actually execute, make sure the projects are going well. We manage the distributions. So we do everything end to end so they don't have to.